Friends, today we are going to be talking about value. And as you can see here, we have our lights and our darks. That's what value is. It's the lightness or darkness of a color. Right here, all I'm showing is black marker with dots and how that shows value. We go from nothing to darker to darker to darker and darkest. Down here, we have shading from lighter, lightest, to darker to even more darker and darkest. Down here, I'm going to show you what that looks like with color. So when we have value in color, we're going to start out with just the color. And right here, I have blue. Now, if I were to add black to my blue, that's when we're adding shades. That's when we talk about, oh, that's a very nice shade of blue. That means we're adding black to it. So I'm going to take my blue and add a little bit of black. Black is very strong, so we got to be really careful when we are adding black to our color. So this could be any color, but I chose blue. So you can see that it's darker. Now we're going to add a little more black, only a little bit, to show it even darker. And then I'm going to add a little bit more black to show darkest. So it's a little difficult to tell in this camera, but you can still see the blue in there, but it just gets darker as you add black. Now I'm going to wash my brush. Oops. And dry it off. And I'm going to show you the tints. The tint of a color. So once again, we have got blue right here. It's not dark blue, it is not light blue, it is just blue. When we go this direction, we are getting darker shades of blue. Now we're going to head in this direction and we're going to get lighter tints of blue by adding white. So with my blue, I'm going to add a little bit of white. Now just like black, white and black are neutral colors and they are very powerful. So we never want to add too much at once because we'll get a color that we don't want right away. So you can see my lighter blue. Now I'm going to add a little bit more white. And it's getting even lighter. And I'm going to add a little more white to get my lightest. Notice how I'm mixing it in my palette first before I'm putting it down on here. Because if I mix it on the paper, we wouldn't get the true color. So we've got our tints, we've got our true color, or it can be referred to as a hue. And then down here we have our shades. So today we are going to make our very own value ice cream cones with paint. So before we get started, for my friends at home that don't have paint, you can still do this project. You can show value like I showed you right here. You can show value in multiple ways. You can do it by showing dots. That was not done with paint. That was done with a marker. But I did it by showing dots. More dots, even more dots, and the most dots. That's how I got from light to dark. In this area, I got from light to dark through shading. You can see my pencil lines as I was shading. So my friends that don't have paint at home, there's no worries, because you can use this method if you have markers, or if you have a pen, that can work too. And you can use this way if you only have a writing utensil like a pencil, or if you have crayons or colored pencils, you can do it this way as well. So I'm just going to show you really quick with my crayon about how to show the shading. We're going to start out with the darkest, and I'm going to push but nicely color as well as I can. You really want the color to be shown. I'm not going to color in the whole thing. I just want to give you a good look about what it would look like. But you want to take your time, because you can notice, you can see those shading lines. The next one I'm going to do a little bit lighter. I'm not going to push as hard as I did here. Now friends, don't push so hard that you break your crayon. You don't need to be squeezing or pressing that hard. That just ends up making your hand hurt. So for the next one, we're going to lightly shade, but not really light, just in the middle from what we just did below us to what we're doing here. Now, I'm still taking my time, but you can tell that it's lighter. I know that we didn't add black and we didn't add white, but we can still show value with pressure. So for my last one, I'm going to shade it in very gently. I'm barely putting any pressure on my crayon. And I'm just lightly going back and forth. But making sure that it doesn't look like scribbles, because that will not look neat and organized. It will make your coloring look really messy. So notice how that is extremely light. And this is all the same crayon. I did not change my crayon. I used the same exact crayon the entire time. So, now that you know how to do this, if you don't have paint, you can use it with crayons, colored pencils, normal pencils, markers. Now that you know that, we're going to get started with our project. And what you're going to need is a white piece of paper. If you have colored paper, you can use brown. But if you don't have colored paper, you can always draw on your white piece of paper with crayon and color it in, because this is going to be for our cone to put our ice cream scoops in. You know what, or maybe you don't even like cones and maybe you want to make it a bowl. That is totally up to you. But I'm going to show you how to make it with a cone. And you're going to need paint. If you're painting, you will need a color of your choice, and you will need white and black. Notice how I left space in between on my palette for color mixing, because you're going to want to make sure that you color mix before you paint it on here. Now, if you don't have a palette, just use a paper plate, a paper towel if that's all you have, or another piece of paper to put the paint on. That will also work. Any garbage of like a old container, like how I'm using this. It's a old cream cheese container that I'm using. You know, something like this you could also use. So I have my cup of water, I have my paintbrush, I've got a paper towel to clean my paintbrush, and I've got my pencil, my scissors for cutting out when it's dry, my glue stick, and if I need to, I can use crayons or markers to add some details later. So what I'm going to be doing first is I'm going to be drawing my ice cream scoops. Now, friends, I really would suggest that you make sure that you use a pencil. It's very hard for you to see the pencil on my paper, so I'm going to be using a marker, but please don't. If you mess up, you're going to have to restart and recut it out. And you don't want to have to do that when you can just erase a small little line if you make a mistake. That's why pencils are so wonderful. So I'm going to make 3 scoops. I'm going to start at the bottom. You guys see this? My paint and my water in the way. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to make 3 bubbles. 1, kind of looks like the letter C. 2, and 3. Notice how I curve the ends upward. And then I'm going to make a big, it's going to look like a rainbow. A nice big rainbow. And I have 1 scoop of ice cream. Now I'm going to do that again. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to do the big rainbow. And I'm going to do it one more time. And it's okay if you're not making them in a line. We're going to end up cutting them out when they're all dry. So maybe I want to make mine over here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I have my 3 ice cream scoops. And my blue ice cream, because that is the color that I chose, is going to be the one in the middle. So my middle one, because that is the one that is going to be neutral, meaning it's going to be the color that we poured. I'm not adding white, I'm not adding black, I'm just using the color that I choose. Maybe you choose yellow, or maybe you choose purple or green, but that's up to you. You can have any color ice cream that you would like. So I'm going to paint my middle scoop blue. Now remember, take your time. You want your painting to look very nice. And it's okay if you go out of the lines because we're going to cut them out. So don't worry about that. But notice how I'm spreading my paint across. I'm taking my time and I'm making sure there's not globs of paint. There's so much paint that's in a paintbrush that you can spread it for such a long time. You don't need to keep putting it in the paint. It takes longer to dry that way. And it looks globby. Your paper might get all soggy. And it's okay, like I said, if you go out of the lines, because we are going to cut it out. Okay, so we have our first ice cream cone done. Now, we don't need to wash our paintbrush because we're still using our color that we chose. And I'm going to scoop some up, and I'm going to put some over here. You can do black first, or you can do the white first, but that's up to you. I want to make sure that I have enough paint so that I can cover my whole ice cream cone, or my ice cream scoop. So this top one is going to be my lightest. So I'm going to add some white to it. If you want to challenge yourself and make more scoops, you totally can. That's up to you. But if you do that, you're going to need to add another tint or another shade. So right now I'm making a tint, and I'm going to paint my top ice cream scoop this tint of blue. It's a lighter tint. If I made another scoop, what do you think I would do? I would add more white, and I'm just going to show you so that you can see. If you made another scoop up here, you would have to add more white to your blue to make it look lighter, because you have to change the value. So I'm mixing this, and this is even lighter. So when I paint this, I'm just going to paint for fun in the side, just to show you that it's going to be my lightest color on the page. So if that's something you want to do, you can totally do that. If you're not interested in making more scoops, you don't have to. So the next thing I'm going to show you is, oh, maybe you even want this, sorry, I forgot to tell you, maybe you even want this kind of a tint for this cone, you can also just paint over what you just did. Because you found out that you liked it a little bit lighter, and you made a little mistake. You can paint over it, but you just got to be careful, because that paint underneath might try to mix with the top paint. So we want to be careful. We don't want to put too much paint on the piece of paper, because it might get a little soggy. So maybe I liked that color better, and that's fine. It's still a tint. This is the normal color or hue. This is the lighter tint. And down here, I'm going to make my shade. Gotta wash off my brush first because I have tints in my blue, and I don't want the white in there. So I'm gonna rinse it, just swirling it around gently. And I can use my paper towel to dry it off. We don't need water for this paint to work. So we want our paintbrush to be dry when we're painting. So now I'm ready for my shade. I'm going to scoop some of this blue over to here. Spread it out a little bit. Grab a little bit of this black. Well, it's a lot of black, just a little. And we are going to mix it up. Another reason why we're mixing it before we put it on our ice cream cone is because we might not like the way the color is. So we might need to make adjustments, and that's okay. We can always add a little bit more black, or if you don't like how dark you made it because you put too much black in on accident, you can just make a new one in another section of your palette or of your paper plate or whatever you're using to keep your paint on. So I'm happy with the shade of my blue, so I'm going to start painting. You can see that it's definitely darker than my original. And once again, I'm spreading out my paint because we don't want globs of paint. Globs of paint are not helpful for our project today. We want it spread out and thin. We want to paint very nice brush strokes. Okay, so I have my 3 different values. I've got one shade, one original hue or color, and my tint. So now I have to wait until they dry, and then we will cut them out. While I'm waiting for my ice cream cones to dry, I put them to the side, and I'm going to make my cone. Now, like I said, if you don't have brown paper, just use white paper and color it in with a brown crayon or a brown marker, or if you have brown paint. That way you'll have a cone. If you want to make a bowl because you like bowls better, go ahead, make yourself a bowl. I'm going to show you an easy way to make a cone. If you have a square piece of paper like this, I'm going to be using, rectangle, but I'm going to be using a marker because you can see it better, and you should use a pencil in case you need to erase. Now, you need to think about the size of your ice cream cones. Mine were not very large, but you got to make sure that you're making it big enough to hold these 3 scoops. You don't want to make a really tiny one because it won't be able to hold them all, and a really large one might be a little too big. So make sure you think about the size of your scoops of ice cream. But what I'm going to do to make it nice and easy is I'm just going to go from the corner of my paper and make a nice line going diagonal. If you have a ruler at home and you want to use a ruler, you can. If you don't have a ruler, you don't have to. But if I just make a line like that across the paper, you can even go this way if you want and make a really, really long one. But if I go across my paper and I cut it out, see, if I used a pencil, I could erase this. I'm just going to flip mine over. You got yourself a cone. If you want to make the sides more even, because this side is really straight and this side goes out, if you want both of them to go out, you can use your scissors and your pencil. I'm using a marker so you can see, but you can then make another diagonal line and even them up a little. But you don't have to. Now I have the cone that I want. And on cones are those little lines that are made when the cone is being cooked in the waffle iron, because they're waffle cones. And I'm going to show my lines by going curved across. So I'm going to start at this small corner and use a pencil. But I'm going to make my lines going down to show these lovely lines that waffle cones have. You might run out of room for even lines, and that's okay. Just try to keep the spacing correct, like how I have the spacing here. And you don't have to start at the top all the time. You can kind of just move down at the side as long as the space between the lines is about the same. And I'm going to start down here, and I'm going to go down here. And I'm going to do the same thing, but starting in this corner. So I'm going to make my lines. And I have a lovely waffle cone. So, I think I let my scoops dry because I didn't put that much paint on them. They're still a little wet, but I'll be able to cut them out. If you put too much paint, they definitely need a longer time to dry. Especially when you're going to glue them. The glue will make the paint come right off. I like to cut a lot of the paper off around it first because it makes it easier to cut. So notice how I cut my darkest color first because that's going to go towards the bottom. Look at my cone. My cone might be a little too big for my scoops, but we can always fix that. I'm going to cut out my scoops very nicely and carefully. And like I said, if yours needs to dry, you can always just wait until tomorrow to finish this project. You don't have to do this all at once. Alright, I've got my one scoop, and my cone looks pretty big, so I'm going to have to fix that, but that's okay. Cut out my next ice cream scoop. Take your time. Now remember, if it takes you longer to cut, you can always pause the video and catch up to me. You don't have to rush to be where I'm at on this. Take your time, pause the video, get your cutting done, then you can come back later. And press play. This one feels a little wet to me, but just the paint drying. It's a little cool. It's not coming off though. Alright, and I got my final cone, or my final scoop to go on the top. Look how cute that looks. Looks delicious. Now I need to fix my cone. It is way too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over and have my scoops right above it so I can see. And I'm going to use my pencil, but I'm going to use the marker to kind of mark where the scoop is, just to fix it a little. I'm going to draw my line going towards the point, and I'm going to draw this line going towards the point. And I think that will be a much better cone for my scoops of ice cream. Don't you think? I think so. The last thing that we have to do is glue them together. Now, if you were like me and you did not wait a very long time to cut out your scoops of ice cream, then do not glue them right now. But we're going to take a pause and we're going to wait for these to dry before we glue, or we're going to get paint everywhere. It's going to go all over the glue stick, it's going to go all over our hands, and it won't make our project look pretty. So let's just take a moment and let it dry. You can get some other things done and then come back to this video in a little bit. Alright, so we are going to finish our value ice cream cone, and we're going to just glue everything together. And then if you want to add any sprinkles on top, you totally can do that. So we're going to glue the big one down first, and we just need to put a little glue on here and match up our bottom cone. So we're just going to stick that on, make sure it's centered. And our next one is going to be our color, and we're going to flip that over and put some down on here. Notice how I'm not putting it on the painted side. The reason why I'm not doing that is even though it's dry, the color might get all over your glue stick, and then you might not be a very happy person. Because when you use your glue stick again, it's going to be whatever color that you painted your ice cream cone, your scoops, and it might not be the color that you want. But if I put it on the back, I should be okay. Maybe I want this one to look like it's sliding off a little. Oh, a little melty. Okay, so we have our beautiful ice cream cone glued together, and I want some sprinkles on mine. So if you have some crayons or colored pencils, that would be the best thing to use. I would try not to use any markers because markers don't work very well when you're coloring on top of paint. So I had some crayons I'm going to use to just make a little sprinkle. Sprinkles are tiny, so you just need to add little tiny lines. And we don't need to go crazy, but just a small line like this will totally work for you. It's hard to see in the camera. Let me see if I can. There you go. You can see that little line. I'm going to make another little line and another one, but I'm making rainbow sprinkles, so I'm going to switch to this green. And you can see that green really well. I'm going to do this pink color, just making little lines. Maybe you wanted to add a cherry on the top. If you wanted to add a cherry, you'd have to cut that out on a separate piece of paper, like how we did the scoops, and glue it on the top. That would look awesome too. So I'm going to add maybe one more color. And that's about all I'm going to add. I like my cone. So remember, friends, when you're finished with your projects, take pictures of it and put it in the Google form so that I can see your lovely works of art and I can put them into Art Sonia. Have a great day, guys.